Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and tonight on THEOSOPHIA Esoteric Studies, I'm proud to bring you Lynne Salomon Miceli of the NYC ARE. Greetings, how are you today?
I'm fine. How are you doing today?
I'm looking forward to your show as always. I'll be here in case you need me.
Great, thank you, Hercules. My guest tonight is Dr. John Paul Amonte, sharing with us about Edgar Cayce's natural healing. For anyone who's not familiar with Edgar Cayce, I'm always surprised, but there are some people who are not. He was an American psychic and mystic who lived from 1877 to 1945 and gave over 14,000 psychic readings that were taken down by a stenographer. His readings covered topics including holistic healing, spiritual development, reincarnation and karma, ancient cultures, including Atlantis and Lemuria, and much more. John Paul Amonte, who usually goes by JP, is a chiropractor, a licensed massage therapist, and a certified hypnotherapist. He's currently the lead clinician at the ARE Health Services and Spa at ARE headquarters in Virginia Beach. By the way, ARE stands for Association for Research and Enlightenment, and it's the organization that was founded by Edgar Cayce and others to preserve his work and make the information available to other people. JP graduated from the Casey Riley School of Massage, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and graduated magna cum laude from Palmer College West, where he earned his doctorate of chiropractic. He eventually became one of the instructors at the Casey Riley School for a time, the school is on the ARE campus, and currently has his chiropractic practice at the ARE Health Services. He's a speaker on holistic healing and Edgar Cayce's approach to health, and has presented across the US and internationally. He publishes YouTube videos, has published multiple videos on the ARE YouTube channel. You can find them in YouTube under Heal Thyself with JP Amonte. He also writes for Venture Inward magazine, which is the magazine published by the ARE, and he hosts a weekly Wellness Wednesday live video stream on the ARE Facebook page. You can find that on the ARE Facebook page, which is, help me with this, JP, the page is Edgar Cayce's ARE, I believe, is the name of the Facebook page.
Correct, you got it.
Right, and he appeared in a 2017 Japanese documentary called The Readings, which was, of course, about Edgar Cayce and his information. He enjoys sharing his passion for Edgar Cayce and holistic health with everyone he meets. So, welcome, JP.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on the show. Yeah, anytime I get to talk about anything esoteric, holistic, natural health, the metaphysical arts, and Edgar Cayce, it's always a pleasure of mine.
Great. Well, I'm thrilled to have you. So you grew up with the Cayce readings, I believe. Your grandfather, Russell Dyke, was an assistant vice president of the National ARE at one time. So you were a Cayce kid, right?
Yeah, I was 4.5 years old when my mother and I moved to Virginia Beach, and my grandparents had just bought a house there as my grandfather retired as the deputy commissioner of the IRS. And so he was in a Search for God study group, and he had heard about this opening position in order to come in and not only assist Charles Thomas Cayce at the time, but really his job was to coordinate the budget and get the very first computer system to really handle all of the accounting. And so, yeah, I remember climbing the trees, playing on the hills, very young when I was first around the organization. I went to the ARE camp in the summertime, grew up a lot of the members, did a lot of the activities, and it was always like a second home to me.
And did your parents use the Cayce remedies on you as a kid?
Yeah, a few times. I remember my grandparents doing massage on each other, and that very notable smell of sassafras and peanut oil and so forth. doing castor oil remedies for a variety of things. My grandmother, she attended like every conference. And so she was very much always preparing the meals in accordance with the readings. And of course, they've always been very spiritual. So there's always been a big emphasis on meditation, prayer, the impact of our thoughts and so forth. And it wasn't really until I was going from high school into college that I really started to dig my roots into the Cayce material. So it's just been such a wonderful journey for me.
So now, among other things, you're a licensed massage therapist, and you went to the Cayce Riley School of Massage. So can you tell us a little bit about the Cayce Riley School and who is the Riley? We know who Cayce is now, but who is Riley?
Well, I first started at the massage school because when I was in college and I switched from a pre-medical track, I had set the MCAT exam for a couple of years. I thought I was going to be an orthopedic surgeon and studying for that. And then my own health issues, different challenges I was having at the time. And when I started to apply the Cayce readings and the recommendations and the materials, I just gradually got better, overcame a lot of different conditions, diagnosis, and never looked back. And so I wanted to become a Cayce doctor, but there's no Cayce doctor school anywhere. So the best place I had was the Cayce Riley School of Massage. So I enrolled. Actually, it was completely full in 2003. So I accepted the first opening, which was January 2004. And when I started there, Sandra Duggan was the lead instructor. And so her husband, Joe Duggan, was the very first instructor of the Cayce Riley Massage School. Now, Riley, Harold J. Riley, is such a fascinating character. And I'm really glad you asked about him because, most people are familiar with Edgar Cayce, but the biggest challenge was finding doctors and practitioners who could actually do the treatments and people who would actually follow the advice. It was never a challenge to get the information, get the advice, but finding people who would actually follow through with it and doctors who could actually apply it and were interested. So Dr. Harold Riley was the prominent physiotherapist in Manhattan, New York. Now, he basically lived and grew up in New Jersey, and that's where he retired. He had a whole farm there. But he was like the physiotherapist. He was Bob Hope's doctor. He had many celebrities. There's some infamous stories about him and the different arts with the ballet company and taking out a whole big ad and working tirelessly for the performers, the dancers, and so forth. But he also worked with many politicians. He worked with many prominent Wall Street aficionados. And so when he opened Riley Health Services, imagine Rockefeller Center when it first opened in downtown New York, and he had an entire floor. And it was actually through the advice of Edgar Cayce that they went for it and they were able to get just enough funds to start this, and it really just became extremely popular. And Riley helped a lot of people, but his real foray was that he was a stickler. So people would come in with recommendations and readings, and he would literally dot the I's and cross the T's and follow every single step in the readings,
which was an issue because not all practitioners really followed the readings.
No. Yeah, it's tough. Yeah, I mean, a lot of doctors are just trained. Yeah, you go ahead.
How did Riley and Cayce hook up? I think that's a good story.
Yeah, so they first met, I think it was a year or two ago after the first couple of patients started walking in. So actually, if you look in Riley's book, Handbook Through Drugless Health, he describes how this woman walked in with a piece of paper and an outline of a holistic health reading from Edgar Cayce. And to him, he looked at it and it was kind of his usual things of hydrotherapies, massage, manipulation, using specific oils and certain frequencies. And so he quickly resonated with it. But the Cayce readings, of course, then go on to talk about spiritual ideals, the importance of consciousness. And so a lot of these aspects really resonated with Dr. Riley. And so in came a few more patients, and he would follow the directions, of course, like we said, to a T, and people were getting better, and he was just thoroughly impressed. And so at first he thought Cayce was another doctor who was just sending him these patients, out of area. But man, was he in for a shock when he goes down to Virginia Beach and hears this very tall, lean man from Kentucky with a very southern drawl, smoking on Pall Mall cigarettes, eating his bacon. I think like every meal, like I think Casey's favorite thing was like pork chops and bacon. And so, and he didn't have more than like an 8th grade education to the equivalent of our time. And so clearly Riley was, like many other people, right? They were very suspicious. They weren't sure what to make of it. But then Cayce, showed him what he did. And so that afternoon, Dr. Riley witnessed his first reading, and they became best friends ever since. And just absolutely blown away at the accuracy, the specificity, and just how Cayce was able to tap into the individual and speak in a very precise, very slightly advanced form of English and medical dialect at the time.
And so it was actually the Cayce readings and Cayce's involvement with Riley that helped Riley to become as much of a success as he was, dealing with all those celebrities.
Right, absolutely. Not only in his recommendations for business practices, but also using the different therapies, but also in his own health, because Riley himself got in a bad car accident, really messed his knee up. And so he turned to Edgar Cayce and gave him the treatments and the recommendations. And it was alternating the apple cider vinegar salt packs with, using the olive oil myrrh tincture and doing stretches and exercises, a few of the things. And he certainly recovered and got better. But then Dr. Riley did a life reading. So for those of you that are familiar, Edgar Cayce, most of his readings were about physical health, healing, diagnosing things and so forth. But there's a large majority of them that have to do with life readings, the individual looking at their past lives or trying to find out what their life purpose is, or all these questions about our personal destiny. And so Riley got his own life reading and was just absolutely amazed at how Cayce was able to point out from past life studies why he was very interested in this, but also why he was very gifted. So it was very fascinating. And again, they became lifelong friends. After Riley retired, he would have the Cayce family up in his Sun Air farm up in New Jersey. And from what I understand, they stayed very close over the years.
So in terms of that past life that had led to Riley having being gifted, he was working with it was in ancient Rome, right? He was.
Yeah, I off the top of my head, I don't have his life reading memorized, but there were definitely past lives where there were connections and so forth in the healing arts and so forth. And I think anyone who's interested in this, it's really a fascinating topic and something we have really yet to research more and understand in this idea of karma, past lives, and so forth. Yeah, Riley was a fascinating individual for sure.
So Riley, the basis, if I understand it correctly, the basis of the Cayce Riley massage was Swedish massage, but then Riley adapted it and changed it using the Edgar Cayce recommendations. Is that right?
Yeah, so the reason why it's called Swedish massage, I don't know if many people know this, but it was actually the popularity of Per Heinrich Ling, who opened this big healing center in Stockholm, Sweden. And it was right around the time of after the American Revolution. And so Per Ling was very, very wealthy, right? And he was a gymnast, he was a fencing master, he was a playwright and a poet, and his family had a lot of money. And so he himself had multiple health issues, and he actually started using these different massage methods and got much better, in fact, healed himself. And so he created this big, healing center that, of course, he called a gymnasium, where people could exercise, use hydrotherapies, get massages, and so forth. Because if you look at the massage terms, the classical strokes of like effleurage, petrissage, these are all French terms. But Per Heinrich Ling kind of really put massage on the map. And because it kind of birthed out of Stockholm, Sweden, to this day, it's why we call it Swedish massage. But the Swedish really didn't even invent massage. And so it kind of created what's called the Swedish movement cure, right? And it was the combination of massage, exercise, diet, and hydrotherapies. And so, fascinating little piece of history here is the way that it came to America here in the United States was J. Harvey Kellogg. That's right, like the cereal brand. So Harvey Kellogg was the psychiatrist who revolutionized healthcare by changing people's diets and using colonics, hydrotherapies, and so forth. And so he started applying a lot of the Swedish movements, right, and so forth to the abdomen. And so by doing colonics, by, changing people's diets, by working the abdomen and literally flushing people out and detoxifying naturally, they start to have like these amazing healings and recoveries with crazy psychiatric disorders and mental health. And so this is who Dr. Riley learned from. So Dr. Riley took classes from Dr. Kellogg. Yeah, the cereal guy. But, none of the stuff that they make now is what he recommended, because the number one recommendation was steel cut oats, fresh fruits, cooked fruits, raw things, every day, every single morning. So very different. But that's who Riley learned from. And so basically, Riley learned from Dr. Kellogg. He learned from osteopaths. He himself was, if you see photos of this guy, even in his 90s, he was cut, he was muscular, he was super fit. He was in martial arts. He did a lot of different things like boxing, a lot of different activities. And so basically what he did was he combined all of these things together. So he took Swedish massage, he took osteopathic manipulation, he took the approach to the abdomen, and, cleansing out from Dr. Kellogg. And he also learned neuropathy, which is the basic line is that you coordinate the nervous system by just massaging along the nerve pathways. And you focus on the spine, right? So you coordinate the spine and you work from the spine out down the arms and legs. And this kind of formed all the pieces. So the Cayce Riley massage is Swedish, osteopathic, and the neuropathic approaches all combined together. And, and it was directly in line with Cayce's recommendations of a holistic massage, which is the whole physical body. So, you're basically working every joint, nearly every muscle, every organ, every gland, period.
But did some of the movements actually come from Cayce, like the thymus thump and some of those that are that relate to the chakras and so forth?
Some of them, yes. The main emphasis, though, is the spinal massage. After studying hundreds and hundreds of readings, most of the time, Cayce would say just have a good, thorough massage by someone with trained hands or someone who sincerely cares about the individual. So even if it's a loved one, even if it's a family member, a close friend, anyone who sincerely cares and puts their heart and attention to their hands is going to have a positive result. But he always emphasized the spine. And he always emphasized the drainage of the body. So the whole idea was to promote better drainages and promote circulation. So there were pieces where he recommended to work the liver, yes, to stimulate the glands. There are definitely pieces throughout there. But in general, Cayce's massage recommendations were pretty vague. He just would say have a good, thorough massage, at least 30 minutes to an hour, especially after doing a steam bath. And combining with other things. So it was never just massage, it was massage along with other things.
I remembered what it was with Harold Riley in his previous lifetime. He had worked with gladiators.
Yeah.
He had taken care of gladiators, who were preparing for their trials in the arena. I took care of them afterwards. So, and now you're also a chiropractor. How is the way you practice chiropractic, you might say a Cayce chiropractor, different from maybe how every other chiropractor or many other chiropractors practice?
Yeah, well, it's really that holistic approach, right? And so after I graduated, so I went to Wake Forest University for my undergraduate. And so my last 2 years, I spent getting a psychology major and a biochemistry minor. And so I was really interested in the mind-body aspect. I was so inspired by the Cayce readings. I really wanted to learn, everything he was saying about consciousness. And so I really studied psychology. Then I went to the Casey Riley School. Then I completed my psychology training and became a hypnotherapist. And then I enrolled in chiropractic college to learn manipulation, but also to get a doctorate and to be able to diagnose and more or less work in that allied healthcare field. And, the osteopathic profession kind of started off as the profession who developed bone adjustment. So basically, massage therapists are focusing on soft tissues. Osteopaths, chiropractors were focusing on bone or, the hard tissue and gapping joints, which obviously takes a lot of training and a lot of practice. And so the birthplace of the chiropractic profession was through the Palmer family, specifically D.D. Palmer, who he learned his techniques from Andrew Taylor Still, the guy who started the osteopathic profession. And so just like the trees behind me, chiropractic and osteopathic are kind of two branches off of the same tree. They have similar origins. Now, over time, they obviously went their separate ways as osteopaths focused on the rule of the artery. Chiropractors focused on the rule of the nerves and really focused on the nervous system. So they had to become separate and distinct. The osteopathic profession was incorporated into a lot of modern medicine. So you'll see a lot of osteopaths, which is a DO. They can typically get their degrees in conjunction with medical colleges. So they also do now surgeries. They can do prescriptions, medications, and so forth, where chiropractors don't do any of that. So I wanted to just focus on learning the art of adjustments and manipulation, because after doing my research, the osteopaths in the current era, they don't do a whole lot of adjustment and manipulation anymore. And so when I went to chiropractic college, I basically just studied everything because at that time I had already worked at the ARE Health Center. I had already taught at the massage school. So I was pretty much locked into being a Cayce therapist and a Cayce doctor. So I kind of brought all the adjustments in. And what I would say separates me from most chiropractors is just the whole body approach. I literally will go through every single joint, from your nose to your toes, from your fingers. Literally, leave no bone unturned, as we say. So, typical chiropractic profession. Some people will use their hands. Some people will use instruments or devices. It's all hands on, and we literally go through every single bone in the body. And obviously we incorporate massage, right? The soft tissue work as well.
So you do a Wellness Wednesday video each week, and you share principles and recommendations from the Cayce readings, and they appear on the Facebook page of the National ARE. So one of the recent ones I saw that you posted had to do with the importance of sleep and how to get a good night's sleep. That's something everybody needs. So can we talk about that a little bit?
Of course. It's one of my favorite things to do, and I promise I'll stay awake while I'm talking about it. So honestly, if you look at any aspect of healing, it's always highest your growth and repair hormones when you are in deep sleep, period. And so oftentimes, if we don't recharge our batteries, we're always going to be kind of a fatigue and burnout. And so, the other side of that, of course, is to get better sleep, you got to use up your batteries. And so number one recommendation for insomnia was exercise, to increase your physical activity. Now, you can be thinking a lot and feel very mentally tired, but if you don't wear the physical body out and really prepare it for sleep, it's really difficult to fall asleep. And so the top recommendations, obviously, number one is exercise. Number two is staying away from stimulants. Not only stimulates for like the mind, so, the devices, lights, and so forth, but thoughts, right? So, if we have a lot of recurrent thoughts, a lot of things that are stressing us out, and we can't step out of the flow of that consciousness and just find peace, really hard to go to sleep. Obviously, it's very difficult to go to sleep if you're in pain. And so a lot of things that, like aches and pains of the body. And so one of the best recommendations is taking a hot bath, like hot Epsom salts bath, right before bed, 20 minutes, saturate your tub, which means put the whole large, 8-pound bag of salt in your tub, soak in a nice hot bath for a while, And of course, things are going to help naturally relax the body. And so, teas were widely recommended, things like chamomile, passion flower tea, lavender, all these sorts of things that naturally help us to relax. Things like valerian, hops, all these were recommended for different people. But then, to really prepare the body and the mind for sleep, they say would go walk about a mile after dinner, take a nice hot bath, and then get a massage. And the good news is if you have a pair of hands, you can get a free massage every single night. Most people don't realize it. And so literally by my bed, I have the different massage oils. And so whatever is aching, whatever feels tight, man, after a hot bath or even just after a hot shower, just get a little bit of oil, just what your body will absorb, and literally rub and work it into those areas. And you don't have to go to a whole massage school training to be able to use your hands, right? And so there's some real basic techniques that you can do, essentially finding any tender spot and just using circular motion, and then hold over the tender spots in just a few seconds of vibration. Just breathe in and out to the area. As you exhale, just let it relax. We're really effective at reducing muscle tightness. And so if you can prepare the body to sleep, if you use natural relaxants such as those, and of course, a little bit of self-massage to reduce any aches, pains, and tightness and so forth. And of course, what's really good for, reducing tightness is yoga, right? Just creating a nice evening stretching routine. And so Cayce would recommend in the evening time exercise in a horizontal position. And so he would say, just get in a plank position, if this is your feet, put your feet right up against the wall, and with your hip, do circles. Just hold a plank position and just take your hip and just do easy circles both directions. He says it's great for the spine. It's great to help pump the lymphatic system and, kind of wears the body out or uses up the last bit of energy. But the idea was that if you exercise in a horizontal position, it prepares you to be horizontal and go to sleep. In the morning time, he would recommend to exercise in an upright position, preparing the body to be upright, moving about throughout the day. Now, anyone can become a member and literally go on and search the readings because, for every different individual, there was different recommendations, but those were definitely the top tips for a better night's sleep.
So speaking of exercise, I understand that you're in training right now for an Ironman triathlon.
Yeah, that's right. My whole life, well, I would say since about the age of 19 years old, when I first started really applying this stuff, I've never looked back. And so just kind of living it, breathing it, using the remedies, using the recommendations, really putting it to the test in, competitions. I do a lot of competitive endurance racing. And so, I am training for my first Ironman triathlon at the end of September, Ironman Maryland, which is a 140-mile race. It's a 2.4-mile swim, 112-mile bike ride, and then you run a marathon. And so everything I do is Cayce based, or like 90% of it. So between the diet, the food, the fueling, the rest, the way I incorporate massage, stretching, and even the way I train is as in line with the readings as I can to put these things to the test. So it's I do my best to walk my talk and live and breathe it.
So regarding Cayce and exercise, what did he recommend as far as exercise? For not necessarily for somebody preparing for a triathlon, but for most of us.
Well, yeah, so I wouldn't recommend the things that I do for most people. It's kind of crazy, and it took years to kind of get to this point. Like I did not decide just recently. So, I started doing triathlons back in 2011. I started doing long distance running, coming out of high school and college, because I had severe asthma as a kid. I was told at an early age I had to carry an inhaler with me. I couldn't even finish a half a mile without ending up in the nurse's office. In fact, in 5th and 6th grade, I literally had such severe asthma attacks. The doctor said, just stay indoors, kid, and quit running. But I was so impressed by people who could run fast miles and doing these things. And so between allergies, between asthma, like I said, I had like knee issues and back issues and so forth. And so I just started just regularly training exercise, and my body just adapted over time, and kind of, again, using the recommendations Eventually I was able to, I mean, I was never a star on the team. Like I barely made the varsity team in high school, but I just always kept at it. And it was because it was fun. And that's the number one recommendation. So when Cayce talked about exercise, he says, do something you enjoy. He says, don't get involved in sports that get you pissed off and upset about the score, the outcome. He says the negative emotional context creates more poisons in your body than by doing, the exercise, which should be positive, right? So number one, do things that you enjoy and do it consistently. A lot of the challenges is people who try different things, they try it for a little bit, they don't see quick, fast, immediate results, and then they just give up. But the truth about the body and biological change is this. Number one, anything can change. Like nothing is ever permanent in the body, but it takes a long and consistent daily practice. And it takes a lot of patience over time. And so, with regards to the recommendations, he would always say, don't overtax the body. He would say, you need to challenge the body. Most of his exercise recommendations were first thing in the morning and last thing in the evening. And so he said, first thing in the morning, when you get up, one of the best things you can do is about 20 to 30 minutes and something that gets your breath and your heart rate up a little bit, something that's going to make you sweat, a brisk walk at the minimum. And so whether you like to lift weights or go swimming or biking or running, he says anything that's outdoors, right? So you want to get some fresh air, you want to get sunshine. He said there's so many healing components about the sunlight. He says there's so many benefits in being outside in nature and breathing fresh air. So preferably outside should be some of our activity. We want to do things that we enjoy, and you don't want to overtax yourself that you're going to cause injury or burn yourself out, because then you lose that consistency, right? If you can finish whatever activity with like a good positive feeling, psychology shows your likelihood of repeating it go way up. And obviously the health benefits are much better if you have the mind and body connected. And so if you really want to be a Cayce-based exerciser, you got to connect your mind, your body, and your spirit, right? And so you have to have a good intention, a positive attitude, and and move basically. Yeah.
And regarding exercising outdoors in the open air in the sunlight, I recall you wrote an article about Cayce's recommendations on using light for healing. Can we talk about that? Besides, in addition to
my God, it's so fascinating because this is something that's still way ahead of our time. I mean, we all know that we need sunlight to produce vitamin D. Obviously, it's good for the skin, obviously not too much, right? And so typically you want to be, if you're going to get sunlight, try to avoid the peak hours, between like 11 and 2 o'clock. But the fascinating thing about light is that we now know that the different colors, like LED light therapy, has different effects on the body, right? There's red light, blue light, yellow light, green light. Red and blue probably have the most research behind them, and this was in the readings. So you can use specific frequencies of light to increase circulation, to promote lymphatic drainage. But we now know that at the very core of our DNA are biophotons that literally store light information. So literally, the whole idea that you're a light being is a biological fact. And so researchers, when they would dissolve DNA sequences and they put photoreceptors to monitor light, they can measure a small but very real burst of light when the DNA fragmented and opened up. So literally DNA, as it turns out, is simply a vehicle to encode light-based information. And so when we activate our DNA, it's like we can tap into the light of maybe past lives, maybe current lives, even future lives. It gets really wild when you start to look at how the past, present, and future were really kind of all one and interchangeable in the sense. But, the idea about light is you can use natural light. You can use man-made like LED light for therapy as well, because literally it's activating at the very core of our being all these different phenomena. So yeah, you go to the light, right? When it's the right time, I suppose.
And Cayce recommended the violet ray, but I don't think he invented it. That was from, I understand correctly, that was Tesla who, is that correct?
You're absolutely correct. And this is something too that I'm very passionate about. In fact, I just charged up on my violet ray device. If you don't believe me, right before the interview. So here's my violet ray. As you can see, I have the copper. So this is a modified copper rod. As you can see, it's capped off. There's a little piece in between, so it's an alloy. So literally, when I plug it in, I turn this thing on. So inside of here is the Tesla coil. So Nikola Tesla invented this thing himself to heal himself and to heal himself of cuts, of wounds, of circulatory issues, to charge his body up. And then the thing has so many benefits, but it's wild how it's kind of gone out of use. One of the videos that I did was to try to teach people about the violet ray. I mean, obviously it's gotten pretty expensive for all the parts and the manufacturing because it's hard to find. But yeah, the violet ray was invented by Tesla, was recommended by the Cayce readings, and it's something that I personally use on myself and in my practice.
The one that you just showed looks different from the one that I've seen before. They usually had like a glass, they were like a glass.
Yeah. So typically you'll have a glass bulb, right, which charges up and it glows that purple violet color. And basically what it does is this generates a very high frequency of static form of electricity, right? So static is extremely safe to the human body, but it's at a very, very high frequency, right? And so in terms of electrotherapies, the bulb will get ionized, you'd put it on the body, it charges up. I don't have any bulbs within reach, otherwise I could grab it and demo, but you can see it on my videos, right? I've got several of them out there on the violet ray to demo this thing. But yeah, no, again, this is from the reading. So he recommended to take a modified copper rod, and for several minutes you put it in the palm of your hand or under the arch of your foot, and you literally go across the body, charging up the 4 poles, and you alternate it. And so that's one of the things that I do. So it's very fascinating, the electrotherapy. So Cayce recommended the high frequency devices like the violet ray, but also the low frequency devices like the Radiac appliance, which uses your body's own natural biofueled energy, but it's very low. And so those things were commonly recommended.
And what is the violet ray good for? I know
Everything.
New Age people talk about violet Saint Germain and the violet ray being like
the violet flame, right? It's not the same thing. Purple, violet does have different contexts and so forth, but okay. So everything is energy. I think we can all agree, and even Tesla said himself, if you want to understand the secrets of the universe, think in terms of frequency, energy, and vibration. Your skin, the air, everything has a certain frequency and energetic vibration and quality to it. And so basically the violet ray is just inducing energy into the body that's safe for the human. So when it hits your skin, it stimulates the keratinocytes, right? So even to this day, estheticians still use it for skin healing and rejuvenation. Obviously, electricity is housed in our nerves, right? So it can help coordinate the nervous system. The heat that it produces can increase blood flow and circulation to an area to heal anything. I used it on my knee when I dislocated it. I've used it to heal tons of stuff, to heal scar tissue. I even use it to clear electromagnetic energy fields. And I know this is a cool topic, and it's probably one of the few places I can really open this line of conversation up. But yes, if you have energy fields that, for whatever reason, are negatively charged. And when people think about like ghosts and haunting or entities that have attached, in fact, there are Cayce readings where people had severe forms of schizophrenia, severe forms of different types of mental health problems, we'll say. And he said you can use the violet ray for a couple minutes and just go around their aura. I can share with you a couple patient stories I've had where people have had some really wild stories and interactions, and just using the violet ray around their body, they were finally able to get a full night's sleep from either nightmares or all kinds of stuff going on. Even helped out a very close friend of mine who had one of these kind of issues, and it'll blow your mind. But yeah, it's a high frequency device, so anything that has or uses energy can be potentially helped by it. So yeah.
And I understand that when you use the violet ray, you need to put it on your body first before you, I mean, if you're using it touching the body, you have to put it on your body
Yes.
first before you turn it on, because otherwise you do get a little feeling like a shock is that correct?
Almost correct. So again, all these instructions are in the videos. And so you don't want to gap the body. So if it's on, you just put it on quickly and take it off quickly. Right. So that's it. Because sometimes it's just not feasible to put the thing on and then turn it on or plug it in and so forth. But because it's static electricity at a high frequency, it's going to be like a static shock, right? And so to some people, it might feel like a bite, but it's not going to hurt you. I promise it's safe. Just don't plug it in if you're in the bathtub or, obviously electrical, things.
Okay.
But yeah, if you separate it from the skin or keep it right over the skin, it will, and I mean, you'll see it. I mean, you'll see the spark, but it won't hurt you though. But yeah, you want to keep it on the surface of the body the whole time. And when you remove it, either turn it off first or just take it off very quickly and you're fine.
Yeah, well, we've all experienced a little shock from static electricity, and so, it didn't kill us, although it can be startling. Okay, so where would somebody get a violet ray now if they wanted to have one?
This one's kind of tricky because again, like I really tried to promote and push these things a while ago. I haven't given up, but it's kind of gone to the back burner. So you can go to Bar Products, right? So I mean, the Bar website is baar.com. BAAR. Bruce Barr is a naturopath who's the official Cayce product supplier. I mean, I'm an affiliate with Bar Products because he makes great stuff and it's very Cayce based. So you can go to bar.com, but I'm not encouraging people to run out and get a violet ray. I mean, you can find the stuff online, but buyer beware, you're going to get what you pay for because you can find really cheap ones. And I don't know how to say this, but they're used by other groups that are underground that aren't using them for exactly therapeutic purposes. So you might see some interesting sales ads that go with it. But yeah, I mean, if someone's really interested in the violet ray, I mean, they can always set up a consult with me through the health center, which is 457-7202. So if anyone has any specific questions, you can just schedule to block time with me. So that's 757-457-7202. It's the ARE Health Center, and they can put you on my schedule if you have specific questions. But yeah, Bar Products makes them, Radiolux. There's a few other manufacturers, but they're few and far between. They're really hard to find these days. And out of all of the Cayce type of appliances, like I said, they're not really the top of the list anymore for things that I recommend and push because again, it's an electrical device. If people aren't comfortable with it, it kind of freaks a lot of people out. And yeah, what can I say?
Well, speaking of, you mentioned a couple of the other devices, so I
Sure.
think that leads into this question about
Sure.
Alzheimer's. You wrote an article about Cayce's recommendations for people with Alzheimer's. Now, I don't think Alzheimer's existed as a diagnosis when Cayce was alive. He left the Earth plane in 1945, but they certainly had dementia and
Sure.
yeah. So that's a little more complicated topic than some we've talked about, but can you say a little bit about that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I can say a lot about it. That's what my grandmother, had and died of. Well, she didn't die of Alzheimer's. She died because she fractured her hip climbing over barbed wired fence, trying to escape the facility that she had, the memory center that she had to move into. I remember our last interaction, her grandson, we were super close and she didn't even know who I was, but she knew that she should know who I was. And yeah, I mean, it was a really rough last few years for the whole family. Obviously it hit a very deep chord, in the heartstrings. And so, yeah, it just became very fascinating, studied. And so I wrote that article looking at the different readings. And so obviously it was called dementia, senility. Those kind of names existed back, in Cayce's day. But they all had different causes. I would say out of the different cases that I pulled up, Maybe 2 were like true Alzheimer's is what we would diagnose it as, nowadays. But again, everyone had different types of treatments. The one commonality between all of them was that the individual went through some sort of shock, either a trauma, whether it was a physical trauma, whether it was an emotional trauma or a mental trauma, or some kind of shock to the system that was never fully healed or resolved. And he definitely described the plaques in the brain in some of the cases that's now confirmed with modern science. In fact, looking at a lot of the research that's coming out, it's super fascinating because a lot of the things he was recommending are in line with that. And one of those is the diet and the importance of good gut health and the connection of the brain functioning with the healthy gut microbiome. That's definitely evident now. So the research that just came out, I don't know if you're aware, but they have shown now that the oligodendrocytes, which produce the myelin sheath, which is the insulation around the nerves in the brain, are definitely involved. And some of the plaquing and the so forth that occurs in there. And so there's amyloid plaques, there's tau plaques, there's different forms of these things. And so in the Cayce readings, he described this process happening. He described the importance of having good blood flow, good circulation through the brain. And so, using a variety of different things. And so, yeah. And so if you look at, the essential nutrients, or a good diet for brain building diet, the things that are recommended nowadays for good sources of healthy fats, required, B vitamins and so forth. I mean, that's right out of the Cayce material in his recommendations. Recent hot off the press one that I found was that in mice, they reversed and slowed cognitive decline by suppressing one of the pathways. So it's called, I'm probably going to butcher this word, so if any biochemists out there want to correct me, please do. But kyurenic acid, they inhibited this process, and it helped with that. And so, and the same thing by showing, kind of a side case is Parkinson's, which is a neurodegenerative disease. Obviously, they have different causes. But in terms of brain health, the underlying patterns of nutrition and finding these biochemical pathways. And so they suppress this chironic system by using enzymes. And they found, of course, in the initial studies in mice that they were able to halt it, but in some they could reverse it and get rid. Now, how exactly you test mice for cognitive memory recall and so forth? I don't know, sending them through mazes. I've never tested a mice's cognitive abilities, so it's hard to say, but the initial results are promising. But the degree to, that we're able to specifically target certain biochemical pathways is absolutely astounding. And so, we're learning more every day. And so the article I did back then was kind of a summary of everything that we knew, and not only in prevention, but also, things that are correlated with it, right? And so one of the main things that are correlated with it is social interaction and having this, this exercise that also involves the social connection, so to speak, that when an individual is isolated and all they do is watch television or they have information just coming in this way, it hastens it and it can quicken the symptoms versus staying engaged socially, learning new things, because our brains, right, are very plastic. They can remodel, right? So, they found that people who did word puzzles or Sudoku or learn new languages, or, what was really effective was dancing. They found that individuals who learned new dance choreography had a really good correlation with not only preventing but decreasing the risk for Alzheimer's. So obviously, when you're learning group dancing, there's a social aspect. You're exercising and you're learning new choreography. So, so those are the main things that we know about. So we need good diet. We need a good, healthy gut. We need the essential nutrients, and we certainly need to have good social connections and always be learning new things. You always need to challenge the brain in order to form new growths. And so what we find in a lot of Alzheimer's is that the formation of new memories becomes more and more challenging, but keeping old memories is always what they do. And so, I have a lot of interesting stories about this. But obviously, you know, we got like 15 minutes left in our podcast. So I don't know if there's any other questions and so forth. But I would definitely say that, yeah, there's always things that we can do. And the one thing about the Cayce material that really struck me, and I hope anyone who studies it too, is that it's very optimistic. It's just start where you are, but there's always improvement, there's always hope, and there's always growth to be gained no matter what the experience is. And I'll finish with one last case that's very striking to me, which is one of the people who had severe senility. He described a past life that the person was, you know, was kind of finishing up, and this was part of it. But he also described that this condition was here for the friends and family to grow in grace and patience. And he says, you know, we're all connected. And it's not just isolated to the individual as like it's their problem. But he quickly reminded the family, the people that were around who were doing this reading, trying to cure or fix this person. He says, this is just as much of your lesson as it is for the individual. And so as you also learn patience and perseverance and loving and, you know, endurance with this, he says that's what you're here to experience. And that's part of the reason why this condition is here.
Cayce's approach also sometimes used one of the Cayce devices, right, for nerve regeneration.
Well, if you're talking about the Radiac appliance,
Yeah.
yes. So the Radiac and the wet cell were the two of the low force, as I described, very, very low frequency vibration, which means you can't even feel it when it's on. I have a lot of experience with the Radiac. I have no experience with the wet cell. I've never used it or built it because the chemicals and the costs and so forth, but I built my own Radiac by hand. It's got a red and a black wire. Again, there's tons of videos and so forth about this. It's another one of the things I absolutely swear by that I use. But through the black wire into the body, he says you can rebuild the brain and nervous system by alternating a gold and silver solution. So it's gold chloride and silver nitrate, and you would alternate these, and you don't drink them, but you vibrationally induce them into the body. And he said it's possible to rebuild the brain spinal cord that way, because gold is required in trace amounts for the gray matter, and silver is required for the white matter of the body. And so you need these things. Just like in that one case of Alzheimer's, he recommended camphor, the camphor solution, to be induced vibrationally via the Radiac appliance, because camphor helps to break up what? Scar tissue and plaque formation. And so yeah, different solutions were given to different individuals based on the need and the condition. But yes, you can definitely rebuild the body vibrationally and electromagnetically.
And how do the solutions, the gold or silver solutions, how do they interface with the machine? How does it get together?
So basically what you're doing is you connect the red wire first into the device. Now, the Radiac appliance is in a tub of ice water to reduce electrical resistance. So you don't get the top of it wet, but basically from an inch down, you put in ice water about 20 minutes, reduces electrical resistance, so it's able to travel. And then from the black wire into the body, the black wire actually goes into a solution jar that has a metal hook. So there's a black wire that plugs into this jar of liquid, and then another black wire from the jar of liquid that goes on the surface of your body. Now, for some individuals, it would go on the arms or legs. For some individuals, it would go just below the right side of the rib cage over what's called the lacteal plexus, whereas the ducts of the liver and the gallbladder meet, and would be induced that way into the abdomen. So that's how you do it vibrationally.
So that's really a whole different paradigm for getting the vibrations of something into the body.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of this stuff is still ahead of our time. And it's crazy that this was given over 100 years ago.
And those also are available through bar products, right? But people need to know more about them before they actually start.
Yeah, I mean, it would definitely be ideal. Yeah, watch a video, learn how to use it and apply it. But again, I'm not really sure. I mean, I would honestly hope one day that these things would be more relevant and more accepted. I just don't know that they will be. I can definitely say this, though. that there's a lot of things from the Cayce material that is more than ever now applicable. And the main part is consciousness. Where Cayce was really ahead of our day is in looking at the role of the mind, our emotions, and what your ideal is or what your intention is. And he really was emphatic on that. First of all, you have to know why you want to be healthy. You have to know, and visualize that health. And more importantly, you have to coordinate that with the other parts of your life, your relationships, your work life, all these purposes in life that we describe, your creative outlets, so to speak. And it has to be in a spiritual context, and so connect with your highest self, know why you want to be healthy, and start from there. And the thing that really sets the readings apart is this aspect that we have this inner healer and we have this intuitive self. And if we can just tap into that, then our body and our mind and our consciousness, it's going to tell us what to do, and it's certainly going to tell us what not to do. And so really one of the best things we can all do is learn to listen. Just learn to listen to your body, use your dreams, learn to meditate, use prayer, use intention, and be able to quiet all that thought chatter so that as you literally put a focus on any part of the body you're trying to heal, it will literally give you information and give you feedback on what to do. I mean, think about it. Cayce was literally able to tap into your consciousness to tell you what was going on with you. So we need to try to cut out the middleman. And can you imagine if we all had a computer system and we could all just tap into our network like an antivirus just spits up, this is what's wrong with your computer, this is what it needs. Well, our bodies do that as well, but for some reason we've disconnected, we've lost that ability to read our body and literally get that information on what's out of balance and what's not coordinated. And the part that's really ahead of our time that makes it really difficult is the whole symptom and diagnosis paradigm that the modern medicine is still kind of stuck in. Most people still have this automatic belief that if you have a pain or you have a problem, you have to go to somebody else to tell you what's going on with you and then take or do a thing to fix that. And Cayce would say time and time again, anything, whether it's drugs, surgery, exercise, meditation, castor oil, it is the changing of vibrational frequencies at the cellular level, at the tissue and the organs. If you can shift those frequencies and those vibrations, even at the spiritual level, the level of the atom, and what we know now as the quantum world, if you could change those frequencies and change those vibrations, any healing is possible and potential. And so it really does make us curious on things like the placebo effect, right? People taking sugar pills and having complete cures of things. People who have all kinds of these amazing, miraculous healing stories. And when you ask them, it's things that they truly believe in, right? They have their intention set, they know what they want to do, and it's something that they truly believe in. And so whatever it is that you do, if it's using castor oil or violet rays or whatever medical procedure, listen to your body, trust yourself, and follow that, irrespective of outside influence. And it's amazing what we can heal and what we can overcome. I know as, the different things that I've healed in my own body. And kind of once you get on that path, it's kind of addicting because then you really understand, like, man, what is the human potential, right? How far can we go, right? Is it possible to do an Ironman triathlon? Well, we're going to find out. So, so I see we got about 5 minutes left. So any other questions or any other things that you want to focus on?
Well, let's talk about, you've talked about a lot of things a little bit, and people may want to find out more about them. So first of all, can you tell people again how they can reach you?
Well, if you want to meet me in person, you got to come to Virginia Beach. I occasionally will do seminars. I'll travel to different areas, but I have a 9-year-old son. I got a busy practice and a lot of stuff here. So if you come to Virginia Beach, my practice is at the ARE Health Center, so Edgar Cayce's ARE. Again, I do chiropractic, massage, and Cayce-based manual therapy. That's my specialty is neuromusculoskeletal treatments. If you can't go to Virginia Beach, you can call the health center and set up a consultation over the phone. But like you said, you can find me on the Facebook page. So every Wednesday, I do a Wellness Wednesday at Edgar Cayce's ARE Facebook page. My own Facebook page is Dr. Jean-Paul Amonte. I'm on Instagram under Holistic Natural Care. I'm on the ARE's YouTube, and I have my own YouTube channel I just started called Holistic Healthcare.
Wow.
So I'm on the internet, I'm on social media, and I'm here in Virginia Beach, Virginia.
And can you give that phone number again slowly? Maybe say it.
Yeah, the ARE Health Center is 757-457-7202.
Wonderful. And if anybody needs to reach me, they can reach me at info@edgarcaycenyc.org. And I'll spell that because a lot of people don't know how to spell Cayce. So it's info, INFO, at EDGARCAYCENYC.org. So thank you, JP. This has been so interesting. And I think we have only just kind of touched the surface of all the things that we're talking about. So maybe we'll come back again together and do more.
Sure. Yeah. If anyone watching or listening to this podcast has any specific topics that you're interested in, please feel free to reach out, and I'll be more than happy to come back and we'll pick up the conversation from there. Thank you so much, Lynn, and thank you so much, Hercules. I appreciate the opportunity to get this holistic, natural healing message out there because, listen, folks, your body can heal itself. There's so much information and there's so much evidence and research now on these holistic natural methods, and Cayce was way ahead of his time. And now more than ever, it's such a desired topic of how can we heal ourselves naturally and how can we get back in balance with ourselves and back in balance with nature. And that's what we're all about.
Thank you both for an awesome show. That was phenomenally interesting and relevant. And I thank you for all the information that you shared. And I thank Lynn for picking such an awesome guest. The show will be posted sometime tomorrow. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Hercules.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.